Those days, again, many crowds being also not having something they might eat, after summoning the disciples, he is saying to them.
All right. In those days, again, now crowd is singular, isn't it?
Yes.
So in those days, again, there being, now that's a participle unclass, there being a large crowd or a great crowd or something like that, and there being a great crowd and not having, now T here is an odd use of T, this is an interrogative, it's kind of like, what can they eat? But it's really functioning grammatically as a relative pronoun. Not having that which they might eat. That's a subjunctive there, isn't it? There is subjunctive. Phagamai. What's it from? Estio. That's right. So that's the aorist principal part of estio. All right, to eat. After summoning the disciples, he says to them. Now that's a good way of doing it. Instead of saying he is saying to them, right? He says to them in narrative, right? But what you did was fine. He says to them, verse 2, Joe?
I have compassion on the crowd because now 3 days, they remain with me, and they have not anything to eat. Anything they might eat.
Yeah, very good. All right, this word splonidzamai, it's obviously a deponent. We saw the noun form of that in 1 John. Closes up his splonkna, bowels of compassion. Here I am moved compassion. There, I think you gave a really good translation of that. How'd you say it?
I don't remember.
But
I think I said I have compassion.
Yeah, I think so too. It's on tape, so we'll save it. But, that was a good translation. I remember thinking. That's right. And now we have epi, so that the idea is to have compassion over the crowd, or to have compassion on the basis of the crowd, or something like that. But for in English, have compassion for the crowd, because already 8 days already, not now, because already 3 days they are remaining. They remain with me. Moi, by the way, how would you give me a case and usage of moi, with me?
Dative.
Dative?
Some.
Yes, very good.
Association.
That's right, association. In an case, it'd be an instrument of association, but the idea is to get the association part of it, right? With me, and they don't have anything they might eat. All right. Let's see. Ben, you up for verse 3?
Sure. If ever, is that?
Well, and if.
Okay. And if, let's see. And if I send them, not eating, or if I send them hungry into their home, they will become weary in the way or in the road, and some of them from far away they have come.
Okay.
Some of them have come from far away.
All right, that's very nice. You can see that if I send them is an accusative or direct object. In the way, that's kind of interesting. They will
become weary.
In the way. So that's going to be probably a locative
Of
place.
place.
I wonder if it could be a dative of destination. But that's not really their destination.
What is
All right, nice. Cyrus? Try number
Okay.
4.
And his disciples answered him, where will anyone be able, implied, to find bread to satisfy basically everyone in the desert, in this region?
All right, good.
This uninhabited region.
Yeah, uninhabited region. Desolate place.
All right, auto, what kind of dative do you think that is?
Our toe. Definitely a dative of direct object.
Okay, typical, that's very good. Typical construction there. Mate tai, what is that?
Still asking me?
Yeah. Well, anybody could answer, I guess. If
A nominative.
yeah. Nominative, plural.
Plural.
What usage?
Look at the cheat sheet.
You don't have to look at the cheat sheet for that one.
Oh,
Accusative, subject.
Subject nominative, that's right.
want to be sure.
All right, autu, what kind of genitive is that?
Okay, well.
Genitive of association.
Oh, well, genitive association.
Is
Yeah.
disciples.
Yeah, maybe.
Genitive of relationship?
Could be genitive of relationship. Could be genitive of possession.
Descriptive genitive.
That's abusive. You're an abuser. All right, probably a genitive of relationship or genitive, a possessive genitive, possibly. Genitive of association, maybe. A lot of times there are various ones that are possible, and you got to say, okay, well, that's probably the best one. And frankly, you might think this one's the best one, and I might think this one's the best one. And we might, we can't say one is wrong or the other is wrong if they're both possible sometimes, right? How do you view the text? All right, Stacy?
And he asked them, how many loaves do you have? And they said 7.
All right. Very good. Autus, what's that? Accusative direct object. Very good. All right, 6.
And he commanded the crowd to sit on the ground, and taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks and broke, gave it to his disciples, and in order that they may place it before the crowd.
Yeah, in order that they might distribute, in some sense, them, basically.
Distribute, and they passed it to the crowd.
Yeah, and that's the same word there, Okay, now let me just talk to you here about this word eucharistesos. What kind of word is that? Huh?
Eris.
Eris. Eris what?
Participle.
Participle, yeah. So,
After giving thanks?
so yeah, and so taking, and you could say after taking, because lavon is an aorist participle there again, right? But taking the 7 loaves, after giving thanks, he broke them, that's implied, right? And ed did do, let's do a little review here. That is a me verb, isn't it?
From
From
He
didomi.
gave, so it's aorist.
Now, what tense is ed did do?
What do you do?
Past. It's past tense, but what kind of past tense? Imperfect or aorist?
Aorist.
Or it could be imperfect.
Imperfect, yeah, because why? With me verbs, if you have iota reduplication, you're in the present system, which means if it's past, if it has an augment, then it's past. In the present system, it has to be imperfect. Aorist has no reduplication, so the stem of the aorist is delta omicron here, right? The perfect tense has an epsilon reduplication. So right away we know that this is an imperfect. Ed did do.
Where's that again?
Did you do?
Where is it in the Bible?
Yes.
Middle of verse 6. Second line of verse 6, second to the last word.
Ah, yes.
See that? So that's how, tithemi works the same way, didomi works the same way, right? And so here I have paratithosen, you see, which means I have an iota reduplication, which means that has to be a present, and thosin is going to tell me that's a subjunctive verb. Did you pick up on that? The same word again, but different form, parathekon. What don't I have there? Do I have iota reduplication? No. Do I have epsilon reduplication?
No.
No. I just have an augment. Means it's
Aorist.
aorist. It's a kappa first aorist, which might make me think it's perfect, but I have to remember my rule of reduplication. Right? So it has ending very similar to a perfect, but the reduplication doesn't justify a perfect
Third.
because it's not there. Right? Okay, let's see. Up there at the beginning of verse 6, who read this again? John? What is to aklo, case and function?
That's a dative.
Yep.
Indirect object?
Close. How'd you translate it?
You commanded the crowd.
Right. So that sounds like a direct object, right?
And can I just ask quickly, the last to'ako, the last words there,
Okay, good. Let's talk about that.
what is that?
Okay, to distribute
Is that going to be the same?
to the crowd.
Distribute?
No,
What's,
no.
is that?
You can look at it a couple of different ways. Probably the best way to look at it is they're leaving out the it. So distribute it to the crowd. Dative of indirect object. You could say to distribute to the crowd. You could say dative of advantage. But I think it's probably best to look at it as leaving out having the direct object understood, because that's happening a lot in this context. Those kinds of nouns being left out. That's a very good question. Let's see. Well, let's see. You have the same situation with ededu tois mate tois. He gave to his disciples. Well, what's the case and function of disciples? Mate tais.
Dative, direct object.
Dative of direct object. Well, dative of here indirect object, because he gave something to the disciples. Right, and again, we probably had the direct object just understood and left out. He gave the bread to the disciples to distribute. Whereas in the other one, he commanded them. Okay, there's nothing left out. They're the direct receivers of the action of commanded. See the difference? And command is just a kind of. I'm getting the impression in this context that verbs of communication I was going to take their object in the dative, because he answered them, that was in the dative. He commanded them, right? You can begin to see that where the subjective aspect of interpretation comes in, right? How do you categorize these things? So interpretation is an art and a science. And the science part is definitely, we can look at that and say, well, that's a dative form. It's not an accusative. So that's the objective fact. But what is it? Is it a dative of advantage? Is it a dative of indirect object? You can kind of argue that both ways. And it becomes a judgment call. Well, which is the best? Think you're ever going to be influenced by your theology, which you pick to be the best?
No.
No. Not senior pastors. We're very objective. Okay, very good. 7. Now, you know that in every word, we're going to be able to say, what function does it have in the sentence, right? And some words, like verbs, we're going to be able to say, what kind of present is it? What kind of active is it? What kind of indicative is it? What kind of participle? So we may have several functions for one word, right? For tense, voice, mood. Now, the thing to take heart with is that most words in most sentences are obvious. And the functions of most words in most sentences are not critical to pour over it and spend a lot of time on. The point is, most sentences will be clear to us intuitively. We will all thank the Lord for our intuitive gift of language. What we're doing here is a very unnatural way to handle language. The original readers of Mark were not saying, oh, that's a dative of direct object. They just understood it, right? Now, they could have understood it in one way, and somebody else could say, well, could you understand that as this? Right? So we're taking it apart and being way more scientific, you might say, in a sense, with language than language is meant to be treated like, right? So we thank the Lord for our intuitive gift of language understanding. So most of the time we just understand it, but when we come across something, we go, oh. And sometimes we might think we understand it, but asking the question can be very instructive. Like, oh, his disciples. Well, how mundane is that? His disciple. But you start asking, what kind of genitive is his? And you begin to decide, well, is it a genitive of relationship? Is it a possessive genitive? Now, when you answer that question, do you think your view of Jesus and his relationship to his people is going to affect how you decide on that? Is Jesus primarily Lord, or is Jesus primarily friend for you? See? He's both, but what's primary? So is it going to be genitive of possession, because he's Lord, or genitive of relationship, because he's friend? And does it make us think about our theology a little bit when we ask that question, right? So is our theology affecting the conclusion we come to? Yes. But are the questions going to affect our theology? Well, hopefully. Right? Hopefully it goes both ways.
Well, similarly, Dr. Stanley, like you brought out in verse 1, he says to them, Mark was never a disciple. He was just a young boy at the time of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So he's writing this probably during or after the fall of Jerusalem. And so he says to them, that whole Testament, third person, singular, the whole idea of it being a kind of a historical narrative in a sense, as opposed to personal witness. Somehow he got this from the oral tradition, from other writings that were pieced together.
Until they got it from Q, of course.
We still give him priority as authoring the first gospel.
Right.
Even though he doesn't have first place in our collection of the works.
Yeah. All right, very good. Verse 8, who's up? Okay.
Is that 7?
I'm sorry, 7.
Speak up. And this is weird. And it looks like Andy had a small fish.
If you,
But I don't know who the he would be.
only got,
No, they.
Is
Could
it
be third plural.
yeah.
On this, I'm gonna on.
Oh, okay. Okay. And they had a small fish. And blessing it, he said, right. About that there, and blessing it, he said, and this, and gave this out or something like that, or set this out also. Not sure what to do with that, David.
He said also to distribute these.
Was it eat and blessed also?
And after blessing, and they had a small fish, and after blessing it, he said to also distribute these. Now remember
Oh,
that,
kite also, yeah.
and the it becomes these, interestingly,
Okay,
after he blessed it. Okay. Ichthudia. That's a weird word and a weird form. What case and function do you think it is?
actually, it's like a plural.
All right.
What's that?
Case. Accusative of.
Oh, how it's used? Accusative, direct object. And then you have. Is that the
Yeah.
plural?
Yeah, it is. I think it is plural. They had some small fish.
A few fish.
And I got sucked into the singular idea.
Oh, okay.
They had. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. He had they had a few fish, right? And he blessed them, and that's plural too. And after he blessed them, he said, also distribute these. But anyway, it's an accusative of direct object, right? What about auta? He blessed them. What's it a direct object of?
Blessing.
Yeah, so the participle can have a direct object, right?
That's
So
pretty
that-
rare, right?
Hmm?
Is that rare?
For participle have a direct object? No. Nope. All right, very good. All right, Robert, verse 8.
Okay. And day 8. And I'm guessing that's, we translate this as they became full or.
Yeah,
So
they were filled. Very good.
that's right. Yeah.
Let's start over.
And, in Sumatra, they gathered.
Okay, they took up.
Oh, okay. They took up 7
Baskets.
baskets. Okay.
Or hampers.
Hampers.
That was the alternative translation.
I like hampers.
They took up 7 hampers.
Right next to the socks.
Spurida?
Remaining.
You don't have
He
the.
doesn't have this one, so it's full of remaining pieces.
Right.
Okay.
7 hampers of the remaining pieces.
7 baskets, 7 full baskets of
Oh, is it?
remains or something like that. Remains isn't a good word. 7 baskets of leftovers.
Leftovers.
That remains with the fish.
That's right. All right. They ate and they were filled and they took up 7 spuridos is our accusative of direct object. They took up the baskets, right? of remains. Baskets, full baskets of, what do they give for that? Fragments. Baskets of fragments. What kind of genitive is that? I'll give you that one.
That would be genitive of.
Okay, remember bucket of balls?
Yeah, I was trying to remember.
Contents. Genitive of
Yeah.
contents, that's right.
What are some of the ways you can translate that idea? Because in English, you can translate it 7 full baskets of remaining pieces, or 7 baskets full of remaining pieces. Or, I mean, how many ways can you do that and still be true to the text?
Well, I don't know how many, but both of the things you just said say the same thing.
That's good. I wrote one of them down.
7 baskets full of pieces, or 7 full baskets of pieces, says the same thing. Unless you have 7 baskets of full pieces. But then you can only have that if it's a full meal deal.
7 baskets full of pieces.
Filled with pieces, that's what we're talking about. That's what I'm talking about, 7 baskets.
All the pieces.
All right, we've gone through everybody, haven't we?
Yeah.
Who would like to do number 9 for us?
I'll do it.
Okay, go for it.
And they were as 4,000, or I think the book says that means there were about 4,000 men.
That's right.
And he released them, sent them on their way.
So he fed him and let him go. No, I fed him and taught him some more. That's Jesus is gracious, isn't he? He taught him and then he fed him and then he sent him over. All right, number 10.
And immediately getting into the boat with his disciples, they went into the region of Dalmanutha.
All right, awesome. 11.
Anyone?
Yeah.
And the Pharisees came out and went to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven, testing him.
Very good. All right, 12.
And sign deeply, no, sign in his spirit, he says, why does this generation seek a sign?
Good.
Truly I says to you.
The things we laugh about. I love how he cracked up because he said,
That's good.
Truly I say, what verse am I on?
I can't see the verse anymore.
truly I says to you, that's where you were at.
Yeah.
Oh man, will be given this generation this sign. No, I don't know.
That's an idiom, and it kind of is a Hebraism. If this generation, if it is given to this generation a sign, if a sign is given to this generation, that leaves out the other part of the conditional sentence, right? Like, may something bad be done to me if this generation is given a sign. So, in other words, this shows up in the book of Hebrews as an idiom too. It means there ain't no way this generation is going to be given a sign. It's not going to happen. But given that, if it is given, if a sign is given to this generation, that's a passive transform, isn't it? So semeon is going to be a subject nominative, and to this generation, that would be in the active sentence, that would be the direct object, wouldn't it? So this is coming over as a direct object. No passing fence, but, okay, 13.
I'll do that one.
Okay.
And leaving them, they embarked again into the boat, going away to the other side, away from.
Okay, that's good, but both those are participles, right? After leaving them, after embarking again into the boat, he departed to the other side. Okay. Very good. We did 14, 15, and 16. We'd like to do 17. Now, we get in some cool stuff here. Right? And Jesus, knowing, that's an aorist participle, right?
Yeah.
But I might not want to say Jesus after knowing.
I put Jesus knew, saying to them.
Yeah, but it's participle. So Jesus,
I do that.
Jesus knowing,
Knew.
says to them, why are you discussing that you have no bread, or you do not have bread?
Not yet.
Do you not yet know, nor do you understand, or neither do you understand? Got a little bug screaming in my ear. Now, this is an odd thing here. You have your heart having been hardened. Well, that's hard to get into English. Really, your heart has been hardened, probably is the best English condition. But, you have a part of you having been hardened. That's kind of interesting. You know, they were worried about getting into the boat without bread. They just saw Jesus take, some bread and feed a bunch of people, and now they're worried about not having bread. I wonder if they thought they didn't want to impose on Jesus or something. Yes?
The way you translated that didn't sound very much like a question.
Well, let's see if I can do better. Where was I? Why are you discussing that you have no bread? There's the question.
No, the last part about the hardened heart.
Do you not yet? Oh, well, yeah, I can see that. Do you not know, do you understand, do you have your heart having been hardened? Is your heart hardened?
Are you having a hardened heart? That's how I translated it.
Are you having a heart? Yeah, that's good. That's a very good word. I did not translate that as a question. Thank you. I stand corrected. All right. Who wants to do 18? Okay, go for it.
Having eyes, do you not see? Do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember?
Very well done. That's kind of, a reference to Old Testament prophetic stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, 19.
When I broke the 5 loaves into the 5,000, how many? No, hampers is in there somewhere.
Well, this word kophanos, that's got to be where we get coffin from, doesn't it?
Baskets. How many baskets full of fragments did you take up? They say to him 12. They says to him 12.
So now, he goes back and he makes reference to feeding of the 5,000. Then when, page turn, someone go ahead.
And also the 7 to the 4,000. How many campers? Let's see. I lost my place. How many full hampers of fragments did you cut off? And they say to him, 7.
You're having a lexosyntactical problem there, I think.
I think so.
All right.
I'll do the next verse.
Okay, go ahead.
And he said to them, do you not yet understand? Are you not yet understanding?
Verse 31 begins an interesting section of this. This is kind of a fun section of it. Began to teach them that it is necessary for the Son of Man to suffer much and to be delivered over. Isn't that right? To be tested, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rejected. Okay, rejected, sorry. To be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and to be killed, and after the third day to rise. And he spoke the word with confidence. Now, with confidence, that's a dative form. What usage of that would that do? He spoke the word with confidence. Nope.
Manner?
Manner. That's very good. Woo! Dative of manner. I would call it an instrument of manner, but you may call it a dative of manner. So there you go. And
How about adverbial dative? I thought that.
And taking Peter, he and taking Peter, he asked him. Peter's a subject. And Peter, taking him aside, rebuked him. And turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, "Depart behind me," literally, "get behind me, Satan." Boy, he calls Peter Satan. It's got to make you think.
Well, isn't that I just mean adversary in the Bible? And doesn't the word Satan, it's not really a proper name, is it? Isn't it?
Well, no, I think it's used as a proper name for the devil.
Well, I think it's used as a proper name for the devil, but I think, isn't it also, doesn't the word actually mean adversary?
Well, I think in this context it's clearly a reference to Peter.
Because I don't think Jesus is saying that he is Satan. I don't.
No, he's not saying Peter is literally Satan, but Peter is being. What would you say?
An adversary?
No, well, I think more than just an adversary. I think clearly more. I think Jesus is clearly saying this is a satanically inspired thought, basically. This is consistent with what Satan himself would wish to happen.
Right, and he goes on to explain that in more mild, right?
If we were in an argument back then, just any kind of argument, from the argument, I would call you Satan because you'd be my adversary. Just a simple. I don't mean that you're the devil. You would just be my adversary.
Because you'd think he would say, you're not setting your mind on God's interest, but Satan's or the devil's or whatnot. But he says about on man's, I don't know.
I guess you're not thinking the things of God, but the things of man.
Yeah. When was the term Satan actually introduced as far as meaning the devil?
No, I don't know.
Even Diabolon, it's just slander, right? So if you slandered me, you'd be Diabolon, but you wouldn't be the devil.
The slanderer.
Yeah, but
It was.
Is it impopular? Is it?
Well, yeah, it would be.
Or I guess it would be anyway.
But they're all just adjectives used properly of, like Apollonie, all of those.
Yeah, well, it's like in 1 John, because, you have overcome the evil one. Well, what's that a reference to? Well, that's a reference to the devil.
Right.
I find it a little hard to believe that there isn't an actual reference to Satan here. And we know that Jesus, when we had in Mark 1, that he was tempted by who?
Satan.
Hmm? Could it be?
Maybe it's a, oh, never mind.
Translated the devil.
Is the word used in any other place
Yeah, Satan in verse 13.
in the New Testament? Just
Well, actually, it says that
adversary,
I don't think so.
and not as a reference to.
I don't believe it.
Verse 13, that's the article though. It's two
It's- yeah.
Hey, that's word for word what Jesus says to Satan in Matthew 4. He says, "Hupage hapiso mu satana."
On the temptation.
Yeah.
With
That's
the
how he
article.
addressed it. Get behind the Satan.
Does it have the article? Although you wouldn't necessarily expect it. Did you have the article or expect it in a vocative sort of?
That's true. There's one thing I do.
Well, yeah, I think that, I don't know. I think there's a reference to the devil himself there that's pretty scathing.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that, I imagine was. I was just wondering, because I had heard that.
Now, honestly, it could be true, there could be some merit to it, but without studying it, my bells go off. That sounds like one of those cutesy exegetical things that people try to, put forth that, sounds really cool and learned, but, it's really a little too cute to work to me. I don't know, but I'd have to check it out.
But do you teach normally by default that Satan was using Peter at that moment to, what is the significance of that referring to the proper name of Satan?
I think
What
that,
does it mean for us?
I think that at least Peter, Jesus is saying, "I'm going to go die," and Peter rebukes him. Don't go that direction. That is as well. It is 180 degrees counter to God's purposes, right? What Peter did right there. Well, anything 180 degrees counter to God's purposes, is.
But it's not necessarily satanic.
I don't know that it's satanic in the sense that Satan was literally inspiring Peter at that point, although it could have been. I don't know that it's satanic in the sense that, I know it wasn't satanic in the sense that Peter was a Satan worshiper or something like that. But what Peter did right there would have been totally consistent with what Satan would have wanted to have happen at that point. So, yes.
It's almost like there's an allusion to the temptation, because
Probably is.
because the temptation was essentially to short circuit God's will,
Yeah.
to go 180 degrees opposed to it, and there in the wilderness Jesus said to him, "Get behind me, Satan." Used the same words. And so it's as though Jesus heard Satan again tempting him to short circuit God's plan. Forget the cross, you can go straight to the crown. And it's like the temptation is the way to
I think that, I like that a lot. I don't necessarily think, it may or may not be, I wouldn't go so far as to say, oh, well, Peter was inspired by Satan at that point. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I don't think that necessarily says that, though. I think that, I'm trying to find a way to put it, that what Peter was doing there was a Satan-like thing to do. And he was not getting the point, for one thing.
Was the term Satan around before the Bible was written? Before New Testament, at least? I think it was around for adversary, but was it around for the devil? Like I know before he uses it here, he uses it in reference to
wonder-
the devil.
Yeah, I don't know. That kind of thing is an area that I am a little ignorant in. And I should study that some, but to be honest with you, I've avoided a lot of real in-depth study in that kind of stuff. Because I knew a guy who came from the evangelical seminary and he did his PhD, and his topic had to do with demon possession. When he wrote his PhD on demon possession, by the time he was done, he completely denied his faith. Now, I'm not saying that that was a necessary result of that. I don't think it was unconnected, though. So, I don't know. I mean, I've never wanted to spend a whole lot of my time. I'm not saying it's not legitimate to do so, and I should. But I'm interested in that, though. That does pique my interest in that. You know, because the great thing is you're really asking just the right questions about that. What's the history of this word and its usage? Where does it come from? Is it an Old Testament word? You know, I just don't know the answer to that. There is a dictionary, though. Abbott Smith has a dictionary that makes reference, that connects Greek and Hebrew words together, using a Septuagint partly. So if I looked at Satan in that dictionary, it might give me the Hebrew connection to that. So I'll try to remember to do that. But you're asking the right questions.
Regardless of what that word is, couldn't we safely say that it would have made Peter just stop in his tracks and be like, I mean,
yeah, it would have
Jesus
been.
called through Satan.
It would have been
Like, whoa, whoa.
even if they weren't making in their mind an allusion to the devil. It would have still been a pretty striking
I
statement.
just think like, seems maybe Jesus was trying to get his attention.
Yeah, verse 34. He summoned the crowd with his disciples. After summoning the crowd with his disciples, he said to them, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his soul or his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake, also, my sake and the gospel, which is kind of interesting, right, will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and to suffer loss with reference to his soul, or suffer the loss of his soul, or to lose his soul? For what will a man give? What tense is doi? Doi. Subjunctive. Maybe. What tense is it? What's it from? Ditto. What tense is it? Huh?
It's Eris, isn't it?
Eris. That's right. No reduplication. So yeah.
Subjunctive errors.
Yep. So what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my word in this adulterous generation and sinful generation, even the Son of Man will be ashamed of him whenever he comes in the glory of his Father with his holy angels. Very good. There you go then.
Are we sure it's angels there? Could it be messengers?
Could be.
It's only messengers.
I should have asked what the function of that thing was. I hope none of you are trying to do all of this on one day. It just hit me that, as I told Pastor Joe earlier, I spend Monday largely preparing for this class. And I would be better off if I stretch that out over more than one day. I'm going to do that. So if you are trying to, even the translation, even just the translation, you've got to do that, I believe, over more than one day to really get it, because you have to, this is the whole principle of you have to forget it, come back to it, right? You don't have a chance to forget the translation if you don't do it over more than one day. Before we said you had to forget something several times. So let me just encourage you to take this bit by bit over several days. I would say at least on 3 different days, go over the translation. Because if you don't, if you can get through it, let's say you can spend one day and get through half of it, another day and get through the other half of it, and then 2 more days, go over the whole thing, and concentrate on the first 20 verses in those second 2 days, then you'll be helped a lot. You can read over the textbook. I think you can do that in one day. That's not a problem. Read over the textbook in one day and jot down questions. But when you're doing your translation and stuff, same with the vocabulary. You need to be doing vocabulary just about every day, right, to really get it. And translation, you need to be doing just about every day to really get it.